We actually had a brief conversation at lunch about televising arguments before the Supreme Court, and I wonder if you'd share some of your thoughts about the wisdom or lack of wisdom of allowing cameras into the courtroom.
I was in favor of cameras when I first arrived. That's one of the perhaps few things on which I've changed. Over the years, I've come to believe it's a bad idea. The argument usually made in favor of it is, we want to educate the American people concerning the court. Now, if I really thought that it would educate the American people, I would remain in favor of it. But I've come to realize that it really will not. If the American people sat down gavel to gavel, if they watched the entire feed of our cases, yes, they would learn what the court is like. They would come to realize that we're not spending most of our time speculating about whether there ought to be a right to suicide, whether there ought to be a right to this or that, whether there ought to be and therefore is, but rather that in fact we spend most of our time on pretty dull, very legal stuff like the Internal Revenue Code, the Bankruptcy Code, and no one would ever again come up to me and say, as believe it or not, people frequently do, why, Justice Scalia, why do you have to be a lawyer to be on the Supreme Court? The Constitution doesn't say so. No, if you think we're contemplating our navel most of the time, contemplating grandiose philosophical principles about whether this, that, or the other right ought to exist, sure, you don't have to be a lawyer. But in fact, most of the time we're doing law. And so they would be educated. But for every 10 people who watched us gavel to gavel, there would be 10,000 who would see 30-second takeouts that would appear on the nightly network news. There's no way to stop that. And I guarantee you that those takeouts will not be characteristic of what we do. They will be uncharacteristic. It will be, man bites dog. So why should I be in favor of something that I think will distort the public perception of the court?
Do you think it would?
Besides which, I must admit, I have something of an old-fashioned notion that familiarity breeds contempt. I think there's something to the fact that the institution is somewhat remote, and it isn't coming into everybody's living room every night. Anyway.
Do you think it would alter the way that counsel would argue before the court?
I think, sure, it certainly would.
Do you think it would make it better or worse?
I think it'd make it worse. I think they'd be grandstanding. I think they'd be showing off. I don't want to see counsel show off. Just the facts,
Just the facts, ma'am.
Right.
As Sergeant Webb said in Dragnet.